Well, welcome to our final PASS meeting of the year. Our topic tonight is student proficiencies and standards-based report cards. We're going to talk a while as a group, and then you can ask any questions, and I'll answer them about report cards or specific grade levels. When you walked in, there was a packet of materials for a report card for each grade level. So if you want to see how they differ across grade levels, because there are differences based on the standards required for that grade level. And also there is an article that was from Great Schools, and it's just information that was put out in a magazine about standards-based grading. It doesn't exactly apply to Denville, but the topics do, so you might find that article interesting. So first, what is a standards-based grading system? The intent of the system is it's designed to inform parents about specific skills rather than a cumulative grade over time, so that we can use that information to change instruction and also inform parents more specifically about where their child's areas of strength and weakness are. It is connected to standards, but the standard can be any benchmark at all. It's not necessarily the state standards, it's just any set of skills or content that you find to be of importance and what that student would need to know to be successful in that grade level. They are tied to the state standards, but there are many more state standards than you'll find on a report card. And the state standards themselves, you'll find some of the standards actually have more than one skill in them. So it might be a reading skill, and we've broken it into two different measures because they're unique to in and of themselves. However, it's in one state standard. So although they're aligned, they are not every single standard that's on a report card, or you would have a 5-page report card. Too many. It establishes the expectations and the benchmarks so that everybody in the grade level would have the same expectations. So you determine what's appropriate for second grade, and then everybody in second grade is aiming for the same targets. So it is different that way. So here's a set of grades. So I'm going to ask you two to discuss what you think this student would earn. If this was in a grade book, you have 10 assignments, what you think that student might get or deserve on a report card. Or even discuss what kinds of questions would you have to ask to determine what grade to give those students.
Well, given that the first assignments were the lower grades, most things, at least in what I taught, was math build. So if they're getting the higher, the A's and B's at the end, it means they've learned the skills from the beginning to be able to do the ones at the end. So, depending on how involved the first assignments was compared to the other assignments.
What's interesting to see what we rate, the average we rate the estimate the end point, based on the fact that the end.
And I think that there's so many things we could discuss just about that. You'd say, well, was one a project, one a test, one a 5-point homework? What was the missing assignment? You do notice a pattern, which both of you picked up on. There's a pattern where at the beginning the student wasn't really successful for whatever reason. Maybe it was they just didn't do the homework very well, or it was late. You don't even know it could be late, that's why it's a lower grade. And then as the assignments move on, they start to get stronger grades. So this would be typical if you had a traditional grade book. You would have grades in a grade book, and then you average the grades, and at the end, this could end up being a C, even though both of you saw a pattern that maybe the student, there's probably more evidence that the student understands it by the end of the quarter. That leads us into that whole discussion about why we would do a standards-based report card. How does it differ? The SBG stands for standard-based grading. So a standards-based grading describes a proficiency level rather than an overall, just an assignment that has many skills on that assignment where you count up the points. There's really not points involved. You're looking at specific skills on an assignment, and then you're grading them on that particular skill. Did they master that skill, or did they not master that skill? So on an assignment, you would be looking for how proficient are they? Are they meeting the standard? Are they exceeding the standard? Or are they progressing towards it and they aren't quite there? And that gives us information as to where we need to go. A way to describe it is my sign at the finish line, where we have all the students at the beginning of the year that start at the same place, and the goal is at the finish line. But some students are going to meet that finish line within the first 2 weeks of the quarter. Some are going to meet it halfway, and some are going to go all the way to the quarter, and some are not going to meet it. So it does vary as to when the student might accomplish that skill. But in a standards-based grading program, you don't consider the time as the factor as they develop. You give them time to develop within a certain amount of time. So even though they may not have mastered that, they will continue to work on that until the end of the year, and probably future grades, but will continue to work on that particular area where they are struggling or they're not quite at mastery. For students that accomplish that task within the first couple of weeks, that's where we could exceed that standard. So you push the standard up higher for them, and they just continue to work at it. But they've already mastered what is grade level appropriate for that time of year. It does not present one cumulative score. So in a standards-based grading system, you're going to have multiple indicators, so you have multiple grades in, say, reading. You wouldn't have one overall reading grade. You would specifically break out those skills, particular decoding skills, fluency skills, comprehension skills. And in writing, you would look at different types of writing, the grammar piece, the vocabulary piece, spelling, but then also the thinking process. Are they developing characters? You know, there's so much into a piece of writing, they wouldn't get one grade. An individual assignment can also get more than one grade, because you could get a grade on an assignment for having incredible spelling, grammar, and vocab, but the thinking behind it's not very deep story, or there's not much on theme in there. So you could do really well in one area and still not have mastered, you know, a certain particular skill. Standards-based grading does not combine behavioral aspects. So things like work habits do not go into the academic indicators. They're on separate indicators. Because when we're talking about behaviors, the way that you measure that is by the consistency, or how often they do the behavior. That's different than, do they know how to spell something? Do they know how to use fractions? Do they know how to multiply? So in standards-based grading, we keep those separate, because in traditional grading, those play a role in the actual grade. So a teacher might tack on points for turning it on time, neatness, putting the heading on the correct paper. If you, let's say you did not do those things, and the heading was wrong and it was messy, you may get a lower score, even though the content may be amazing. And we've all experienced that growing up, that you wonder how things are graded. Where's the weight of the points on the assignment? And sometimes students are rewarded for effort, which is a very important work habit, and we'll talk about. But we don't discuss the academic piece. They're evenly weighted, so it looks as though the student might know something when they actually don't, or it looks like they don't know it when they actually do. So we keep those separate in standards-based grading. To really understand standards-based grading, we have to look at what's the purpose of grading. And to answer that, we have to look at, well, what's the role of school, and why do we even give assessments? How we see our role is to educate students and to make sure that they have the skills and the content to be successful in the next grade level, and until they finish their formal schooling and get a job and go into career and so forth. We want to make sure that they have those skills that prepare them for whatever endeavor they're going to encounter. That's our role. In a standards-based grading system, it allows us to pinpoint what skills they know and don't know, so that we can target them and make sure that when they leave us, they know the skill. If we just give them a letter grade, they can move on to the next grade level or the next class and not know certain material that they really needed to know. They could pass with a C or a D. We know people that we all grew up with that passed high school, but whether or not they really knew enough information to be successful in college or community college or career, is questionable. So we want to make sure that before they leave our elementary school, they've accomplished all the skills to be successful in middle and high school. The purpose of the assessments. Our purpose of assessments is not to penalize or reward students. Our purpose of assessments is to look at where do we need to take them. Do we need to enrich them, or do we need to work on certain areas? And by looking at an assessment for its skill and content, breaking it down into individual skills, we can target instruction for students. For example, if we give a math test, which we do in our classes, the teacher breaks down which problem covers which skill. So at the end, they'll look and see if they see a pattern, that these students are missing question 2, 3, and 8, and all of those were on multiplying fractions. But as far as multiplying whole numbers and double digits, they aced that. So instead of just giving the student a B because they missed those 3 questions, we know that's what the student needs to learn. They haven't learned that. Everything else they know. So we don't leave it to chance, we go back and revisit those pieces. And that's really the heart of it. And that's why we have to look at what's our purpose. Our purpose is to improve instruction. It's also our purpose of reporting it on this way on the report card is to let parents know specifically about those skills and where their student is successful and where they're struggling, rather than just saying reading is an A, math is a B, but you don't really know why. And then you're kind of left to looking at all the assignments, trying to figure out, well, my child looks like they know this and they don't know this. So we try to break down the skills that way. Where do our work habits fit in? We know that it's essential for students to leave with us with good work habits, and that is on our report card. The back page of every one of the grade levels has the work habits, because we do need to report on, are these students consistently doing their homework? Are they giving effort? Are they trying to meet up the challenge? Even if they aren't successful academically yet, are they putting the effort in to try? Are they getting along with their peers? We try to report to you their work habits as well, and we work on those in school. It's just separate from, the behavioral component is separate from the academic component. 2 analogies why the bicycle and the science book are here. The bicycle. I was watching a video and noticed an example that one of the teachers gave, that it was like, that standards-based grading was like riding a bicycle. That if we were to grade students on when they're learning to ride a bicycle, they may get on the bike and try it 100 times, falling off every time, every time, every time. Finally, they get to how to ride the bicycle, and then they have it for life. But if we were to actually add up those 100 times, they would have failed riding a bicycle. But the reality is, they know how to ride the bicycle. So they shouldn't be penalized for the fact that they learned the skills. So a big piece in standards-based grading is the time factor. We don't limit the time as to which the student needs to develop that skill, because they may not have it the first time. It may take them weeks before they are confident and competent in that skill. And that's okay. We don't penalize them by saying, you know what, you didn't get it for the first 4 or 5 weeks of school. If I were to average all those grades, probably even if they aced everything else, the best they would get is a C. Well, that doesn't tell us much about what the student really knows. So what you look for when you're using the grade book is you look for when they actually reach the skill and the pattern of consistency. So they may not have it at first, but we look to see if 3 and 4 times, because we do that skill multiple times on multiple assignments. Like I said, each assignment most likely has more than one skill in it. And we record the evidence, and then we see, is that consistent? And once it is, then it's mastering. In the same video, there was a student who was in high school and was discussing his experience from middle school science, that he ended up getting like a 78%. So he always got the C+ and passed, went on to high school, and he failed miserably in physics. And he said, the reason I did was that 22% that I didn't know was physics. So even though I had the life science and I had the earth science, I passed. They sent me on to high school and I failed physics because I didn't know it in 8th grade, and I definitely didn't know when I got to high school. So I thought that was such a good example of, you're right, if you don't pick out what piece that you don't know, then it looks like you know. It's like, okay, 78, you pass, and you know a little bit of everything. But that's really not how kids work. They don't know a little bit of everything. They usually know everything on some parts, and they don't know, you know, they definitely haven't mastered one particular thing. It's very rare that they would miss one of every type. So what do we gain from using standards-based grading? One, that students have time to develop. Our students range in age for that in the elementary. Some of them have September birthdays and are young. Some of them have September birthdays and they're an entire year older. We have summer birthdays, mid-year birthdays. They develop at different levels. And even based on their age, some of them develop, their aptitude, they develop earlier. So we want to make sure that we're pushing students that develop, but we don't penalize the students that aren't there yet. We keep working that skill until it's mastered. And that's the whole point. There are benchmarks for every quarter. Students try to get to those benchmarks each quarter, and each quarter the benchmark changes. So it doesn't stay the whole year as one benchmark, because we have to keep upping it a little bit. You know, it's in little steps. You master it a little bit, then we take it a little bit higher, and you master that step, master the third quarter benchmark, and then finally for the whole grade level with that. So we gain because we give students time to learn the content at their developmental level. We also get accurate information and to focus our instruction. When we pull small groups for reading and math, we know what skills they need to know. We use the Renaissance STAR program, which prints out, based on that assessment, specific standards and skills that the students do not do well on, and those that they know very well. So when we pull small groups, we focus on whatever that skill is. That's one assessment. We also have our Envision is our math program. We do a beginning and middle and end of the year assessment. We use data from that. And just as I mentioned before, we break it down by the problem. That these certain problems are this standard, you know, these next 3 or 4 problems represent another. We always have 3 to 4 problems on every standard, because you can't just do it just one. It's not enough evidence. Parents get a clearer picture on the report card than if we just gave you a letter for each grade. It gives you at least a little more information about how they're doing in that area. You may not know what it means to be limited progression or progressing towards but not meeting, because maybe we haven't clearly identified or clearly communicated where the standard is and what it looks like in each grade level. That definitely is the next step that we would want to take. But you know which areas they're not at grade level at this point, as opposed to that. And it keeps everyone focused on the learning goals. If the teachers know where the students need to be, and the students know where they need to be, and parents know what the skills are for that grade level, then we're all thinking, every time we're doing assessments and assignments and instruction, it keeps our eye on the prize. We know what second grade's about. And if we're doing assignments that are not related to any standard, then it's probably not something that we need to spend time on. And it could be work habits. Remember, there's other character ed and work habits too, but academic as well. Here's our grading scales. We've all been receiving the report card all year, but just a little bit more description. We have an M+. An M+ is our exceeding the standard. The M is really the standard. So if we wanted, it doesn't equate to an A, B, C, D scale, but where we would want, if you want to say what an A would be an M. That's like the top. The student mastered it, they're getting it right. To get that M+ is a student who masters it earlier in the quarter, let's say, we have to push them forward a little bit. Not a standard has the possibility of being an M+. Like our reading levels, we just report their reading levels. And wherever they are, there's really not you can't really exceed the standard because it's wherever you're reading. And sometimes some of the behaviors like spelling, it's either they're spelling in context or they're not. There's not sort of you sometimes do it. So there's no exceeding that standard. Because if you get them all right, that's what's expected. So there's not really spelling at a higher grade level. So M is meeting the standard. P is progressing towards but not yet meeting. So those are students that are really close to meeting the standard. They're working at it, they're getting better all the time, we're seeing growth, but they're not quite there yet. So that's where you see the progressing. The limited progression is a student that's been working on that standard since the beginning of the quarter and really has not improved. A concrete example might be in fact fluency. They might have tested at 20% of they know their facts in September. We test just about every month and they're at 20, 20, 20, 20. They're just not progressing. And that's where it would be the progression. In that case, we really look at the motivation of the student, the situation. Is there something about the testing experience that they're struggling with? Do they know them if you just sat down one-on-one and you didn't have the timer on? We might talk to the parents. We might look to see, if the parent is also seeing that, say, is there something else we might need to look at? Is there an issue with the student's experience in the learning area? And then the X that you might see is if we have not covered that content yet. We did not use any standards that would not be present on at least 3 out of 4 quarters. So there's nothing, last year we revised the report card for this year because it was so specific that you had X's for half the standards until you got to fourth quarter, and that was crazy. So we did away with that, and we just went to standards that we continually work on all year. And then the content standards are not, it's mostly skills on that, on the elementary report card. Fewer in the content area.
I have a question of that.
Yes.
Title says what grading or Denville will be using. So does that suggest that this is up to go to fresh, that will go differently than a township, or is this a state initiative? How is this?
This is a Denville decision. So we can grade any way we want, and every school district in New Jersey can grade any way they want. They can report out as long as they are reporting out proficiencies of students. You can use any system. You could use numbers, percentages, letter grades. We went to this for elementary last year, and we used the M, P, and LP letters. Those were new for us last year. Trying not to, we didn't want to relate to the ABC. We wanted to stay away from that since it's not related. We have discussed moving to a 3-2-1 as well, if that, but for now, we left it as is with the letters. The 3 plus 3, 2, 1 could possibly be, but same kind of thing.
Is that a fairly common approach in New Jersey, or is it really that totally different?
I think this is becoming more common across the country, especially in elementary schools, because now every state has a set of standards. So grading with a traditional letter system, it's not natural for this type of, for the standards that we have to accomplish, because you're almost grading on skills, and then you have to have a separate grade book to add up, to assign points to make it add up to a percentage. Because naturally, if you give an assessment, you would look at, this is what kindergarten and first grade teachers have always done. They have to look at, okay, what do they know, what do they not know, and they put a smiley face or check might, and they make up, they make up some system. So I think more elementary schools are doing something like this than traditional grading. It might look like plus, minus, check, whatever symbol they give it, but more of them are going to this than letter grades. So this year we did not have letter grades in third grade. We had them previously. Next year we will not have them in fourth grade. So that group has never had letter grades. So that the fifth graders are the last of that group that's rolling up with letter grades. So here are a few things you should just note about standards-based report cards. Not all the indicators can receive an M+. So when you get your student report card, only the ones with an asterisk can have an M+, or eligible for an M+. And I wouldn't worry about, your report card is unlikely to be full of M+, because that would mean your student exceeds everything on every standard, which means that they're not in the right grade. So if they have everything at a fourth grade level in their third grade, then we need to move to fourth grade. That's the wrong grade level for them. So it would be rare that we would see that. We've never, we didn't have that this year. I can't say it wouldn't happen, but we would look at that student of their placement, if that was the case. The benchmarks for the standards change every marking period. So the article that I gave you actually talks about it being difficult for parents to understand a benchmark that's at the end of the year, and at the beginning of the year the students have like a C or whatever letter, an LP, and then they get a P, and then they get an M, and an M+, but that's not how we do it in Denville. Every quarter is a new set of benchmarks, because it's usually a new set of skills, especially in math. How they do in addition doesn't necessarily mean how well they're going to do in fractions or in geometry. It doesn't, it doesn't 100% correlate. So what we look at is a different set of skills and benchmarks every quarter. So you could have a student who was progressing in first quarter, but actually meeting the standard second quarter. You could also have a student who met the first quarter benchmarks, but then was progressing on the second quarter benchmarks. It's not that they're going down, it's just a different set of standards that they have to meet. Right? Every quarter has fewer things. Now, when you look at writing or reading, those are the same really it's the same. They're getting better at these skills all year, but they're the same set of skills. They're just, might be in a non-fiction genre and then a fictional genre. But the spelling is the same all year. They're spelling, grammar, working on different grammar skills, but they're working on grammar all year. Yeah?
For the math facts with speed
Yes.
and accuracy,
Yes.
how much of those benchmarks change from quarter to quarter?
They
expect you to know more addition in the second quarter than the first quarter, or?
50% by the middle of the year. So we expect that in the first quarter, we assume they're coming in as a baseline, and we look at it as a baseline. Well, it is whatever it is when they first do the first test. They need to improve, our goal is to improve up to at least 50% right by the middle of the year. 80% right by the third quarter, and 85% or above is meeting the standard. 85 is meeting the standard, but there are many students, most, who get to 95 to 100 by the end of the year.
If they start the first quarter with an LP, how do they catch up? Because they weren't getting that 20%, and now next quarter you want them to get 50%. So they could have improved, but you're not, like, it's very frustrating for them because they are getting better, but they're still getting LPs every quarter, and then they give up.
Correct. I mean, correct in that it does change like that. I can see how that could be. The difference with changing the benchmark would be if we said it was 85% first quarter, then almost every child would have LP. And if we said it's 85%, like we use the end of the year benchmark every quarter, everyone would be LP to the end of the year. So we try to go 20, 50, 80, make it bigger. But I can see that a student may feel they might go from 20 to 40, and they're still not there, but they're increased an incredible amount.
Hysterical because I did so much better, and look, they said I'm doing good, and it's still an LP, and why is it still an LP? And I know it's not.
Sure.
It's just that she said that much, she's just going to give up in the fourth quarter, because no matter how much she's working, she doesn't have every single night, and she's just not quite getting it. She keeps getting better, but not quite enough.
That's a really good point. There's a good, yeah, because the benchmark keeps moving. It's like a carrot that keeps dangling. I appreciate that comment. What we can do to do better in that area is communicating to the students what the goals are each quarter. We can do a better job of that. We can also make sure that we're really communicating to the student how powerful it is with the growth that they've made. You know, that is fantastic. Look at the growth you've made. You know, some sort of cumulative chart that we could really look at for kids so they can actually visually see the growth.
Those percentages aren't coming home either, so it's like, she's doing the tests, and then we just get the report card, so I don't know. I mean, if she said, oh, she's doing better, I mean, first grade she cried every time I went on her. She doesn't do that anymore. In my book, that's a win.
That is a win. Improvement.
But, you know, like there's no, I can't say how much better she's doing. I know they've gotten better, but she can't tell me. I don't know the percentage numbers. It's just very frustrating for all of us. So she does better, but she's just not.
Well, you brought up very good points. This is our first year, and these are things that we need to look at because we're growing from it too. The teachers are getting familiar with a new way of grading. So these are very good points to bring up, that next year, the way we look at reporting to students to make sure that somehow they're able to track their own growth and also sending that home. I mean, it's as simple as having a chart in their folder where they're tracking it and they can feel like, look at how far I've come. Here's the goal at the end. And they can look at the stars moving up. And that's something we definitely do. So thank you for that input. That's very helpful. Something we can easily do. Any other questions on that? X's. X's are only used when we haven't covered the content. I did mention that already. And then finally, some assignments can provide evidence for more than one standard. If you think of like projects, a project is going to have so many standards in it. You know, content standards, writing standards, presentation standards. They might even actually stand up in front of the class and do a speaking part of it. That would be a standard. So some of these longer term, replacing short little assignments with longer assignments because it covers more standards. And it also helps students to stay focused on longer term things rather than choppy, you know, every day a new skill. That's choppy and students don't really think that way. So most assignments have more than one standard in them. In a grade book, then we collect evidence. So we have the standards, where it might be assignments, now it has standards, and you're collecting the evidence whether or not they've met that standard at that point. And then at the end, you just track how they're going across the quarter. Are they actually getting to the point where they've mastered it? And as soon as you see that consistent pattern that they've met the standard, M, then you know we look for at least 3 by the end of the quarter in a row as a pattern to say it's meeting the standard. So questions? You've experienced the report cards. So this is our first year with these particular indicators. What are some things that came up for you that we could really address next year in the way that we're reporting out, the way that we're clarifying, communicating with parents? I know that one thing we're working on with teachers for next year is articulating what each of the benchmarks are to have those available for parents. Like, here's the third grade reading, what it looks like in reading, you know, giving the rubrics and samples. This year we did a lot of sample collection of student work, so we have a really good idea of what it looks like when a student is progressing versus meeting the standard. And that was new for us. Jump in if you have any questions, just let me know. So, a recap of this year, since all of you have been to the meetings throughout the year, which I greatly appreciate. This is what we've accomplished this year. So a whole goal of the Parent Academy is to look at student achievement, student success in the classroom, and how we're going to help students to be more successful. And we ran 5 meetings this year in the 2 areas of instruction and assessment. The 3 meetings under instruction were the first one, we talked about the Common Core standards. Then we did the out-of-school learning, so things that you can do at home, resources. Then we moved to going beyond the curriculum, which is the gifted and talented, which your conversations were fabulous. It's really fueled our discussions here at school. We have not finalized anything. I will send it to all of the past members before we make anything permanent. So you can give me your feedback on that before we get it approved by the board. And then in the area of assessment, we talked about the park, and then we talked about tonight report cards of how we're moving our instruction. Now, and all of those things do align because we have this new set of standards. We've had them for 5 years, but we're really getting to know them well at this point. And so we know how to improve our instruction to actually get students to meet those standards. The park is a new assessment, which is aligned to those standards. So the skills that we're asking students to do was exactly, at least for what we saw. We finished the PBA in March. We're done at the middle school at the end of the year, and we only have 5th grade left at the elementary schools. And they were exactly what we predicted it would be, which was great. It wasn't a surprise for us when they said the students needed to do a lit essay, they needed to do a research task, of narrative writing. We expected that. That's what we've been practicing, and that's our curriculum. Those are exactly the skills they have to know for a grade, the skills they have to know for the state, and the skills that were on the test. So it was all aligned, and that was nice. For next year, curious to see if at this point you already have ideas. We definitely are going to have another park meeting, like park year 2. If there are any updates, changes for next year, or things that we learned from year 1. And we'll have another Common Core as well. Again, how are we improving in Denville? How are we getting better at this? Because it's definitely a work in progress. It's a change to go from giving a 10-point quiz that may be kind of lower level questions or a mix to open-ended and asking kids to tell their thinking. I mean, that's higher level. It's higher level for the students, but it's also a change for the teachers to teach that way so that when they assess, it's the same. We're not asking them to be assessed on something they don't learn at school. Any topics you're thinking of for next year? You could always email me if you see any great articles or if something's coming out in the news, that some hot topic comes up over the summer and you want us to talk about it, please just shoot me an email and we'll bring it up. Because there's things in the news all the time, and it's good to know how do they relate to schools. Some of it's true, and some of it is, we're still looking at.